Welcome to this deep dive into a truly unsettling story. The case of Dennis Rader, the man we know as the BTK Killer.
Yeah, it's one of those cases that really sticks with you. Nearly 30 years in Wichita, Kansas,
Oh.
living this complete double life.
Exactly. On one hand, a seemingly ordinary family man active in his community. On the other, well, a brutal serial killer. It's a shocking contrast.
And the name he gave himself, BTK, for bind, torture, kill, just lays bare the horror. We've got the materials you shared, and our focus today is really trying to understand how could someone maintain that facade? What was going on underneath?
Let's start with that public face then. Dennis Rader, the regular guy. Born 1945, served in the Air Force, got married, had 2 kids, reads like a million other biographies.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But it's his community involvement that really builds this,
Yeah.
this mask, as you called it. It's kind of chilling when you look closer.
Like being president of his Christ Lutheran Church Council.
Right, a position of, moral leadership, and then also a Cub Scout and Boy Scout leader.
Guiding kids. It paints this picture of a solid, responsible citizen.
Totally solid. And then there's the job situation, which adds these layers of, well, disturbing irony.
You mean working for ADT security systems for over 10 years?
Exactly. Installing security alarms, well, he himself was the very danger people were trying to protect themselves from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And later, he was a city compliance officer in Park City, enforcing rules.
Another layer, right. It just shows how deeply embedded he was, how normal he seemed. Did that ADT job maybe give him insights, do you think, into security?
Vulnerabilities.
That's a really sharp question. It seems plausible, doesn't it?
Right.
Knowing how systems work, maybe how to bypass them, it adds to the sense of calculation.
Absolutely. And yet, his neighbors mostly described him as, unremarkable? Maybe a bit officious sometimes?
Yeah, just blended in. That whole concept of the banality of evil really comes to mind here.
It does. And it's important we mention his own term for his dark side. He called it Factor X. Factor X, giving his own monstrosity a name, almost detaching from it. So let's talk about when BTK first really emerged, the Otero family murders.
January 15th, 1974. Joseph, Julie, Josephine, and Joseph Jr. in their own home. It was incredibly brutal binding, strangulation.
And the lack of an obvious motive, like robbery, just terrified the city.
It really did. It signaled something different, something cold and maybe ritualistic almost. That unknown element created profound fear.
Then, just a few months later, April 74, Catherine Bright was murdered. Her brother Kevin actually survived the attack.
He did. He was shot but survived. A potential witness, but Rader wore disguises so Kevin couldn't identify him. Another layer of planning.
The pattern continued, didn't it? 1977, Shirley Vian and Nancy Fox. Always the binding.
Always the binding. But just committing the acts wasn't enough for him, was it? He needed recognition.
Which led to the letters, the communication.
That need for notoriety is key, I think. Late 74, that letter found in the Wichita Public Library, it details only the killer could know about the Oteros.
And that's where he actually suggested names for himself, including the BTK Strangler.
Yeah, claiming his work, so to speak. A really disturbing escalation, moving from hidden acts to wanting public acknowledgement.
And the taunting didn't stop there. He kept sending letters, poems sometimes, drawings.
Right, to the police, to KKTV. They're described as arrogant, boastful, like he was enjoying the fear he was creating, reveling in it.
Didn't he actually ask how many murders it would take to get national attention?
He did. Just shows that deep narcissistic need for fame or maybe infamy. But then after Nancy Fox's murder in December 77, silence.
An abrupt stop to the communication for years. It's almost as unsettling as the murders themselves.
It is, because he didn't disappear. He just went back to his life. Church president, husband, father, ADT employee.
But he later claimed the urges, the Factor X, never went away. So what was happening during that quiet period?
Well, according to him, he was still thinking, planning, fantasizing, controlling Factor X, as he put it.
That term again. It feels like a way to avoid saying, I was controlling myself.
Exactly. Psychologically, it looks like trying to create distance, make it seem like an external force.
Yeah.
But experts tend to point towards things like, severe narcissistic personality disorder, that grandiosity, the need for admiration, zero empathy, and also sadistic paraphilia, getting sexual arousal from the binding and torture.
Not some external Factor X, but internal drivers.
Right. And his ability to just switch it off publicly, to compartmentalize during those dormant years, is frankly terrifying.
Truly, just living normally while holding on to all that. And then the silence eventually broke again.
It did. Years later, Maureen Hedge in 1985, Vicki Wagerly in 1986, Dolores Davis in 1991.
But these weren't immediately linked to BTK at the time, were they?
No, the gaps were significant, so the connection wasn't obvious initially. It was only later, when Rader himself confirmed them, that they were definitively tied to him, and his methods, the binding, were consistent.
And this later period revealed something else truly disturbing the trophy taking.
Taking photos of his victims, sometimes posing them, keeping personal items, jewelry, watches, driver's licenses, not for money, but as souvenirs.
To fuel the fantasies, right? To relive it.
Precisely. It fed that dark internal world. Think about the timeline, 1974 to 1991. 17 years between the first and last confirmed murders he admitted to during that period.
17 years of maintaining that double life. The patience, the control. It's almost unbelievable.
It really is. And then another long silence after 91. It seemed like maybe it was over for good.
But it wasn't. His ego came back into play.
It seemed so. March 2004. Right around the 30th anniversary of the Otero murders, he resurfaced. Maybe he couldn't stand being forgotten, or maybe the Factor X was demanding release again.
And he started communicating again. Letters, packages.
Yes, a whole new wave. Letters, packages with victims' IDs or jewelry, even puzzles sent to the media, police, clearly confirming he was responsible for those later murders too, linking everything together.
And this leads to that incredible mistake, the floppy disk.
Almost unbelievable arrogance, isn't it? He actually asked the police, in one of his communications, if data on a floppy disk could be traced.
Seriously, in 2004, he thought that was secure.
Apparently so. Maybe blinded by his own sense of superiority. The police played it smart. They ran a coded ad in the newspaper, basically saying, yeah, sure, it's safe.
And he fell for it.
Hook, line, and sinker. He sent a floppy disk containing a chapter of his autobiography, believe it or not, to a local TV station, KSS.
Thinking he'd wiped it clean, presumably.
He must have. But digital forensics? Well, they found the deleted data, metadata embedded in the Word document.
And that metadata contained...
two crucial pieces: Christ Lutheran Church and last user, Dennis.
Wow. Straight to him, given his role at the church.
Exactly. Suddenly, Dennis Rader, church council president, former ADT guy, scout leader, he's the prime suspect.
They still needed definitive proof, though, right?
Right. They did. And they got it through DNA. Investigators managed to obtain a pap smear record of his daughter from a medical clinic, got a warrant for it. The DNA profile developed from that sample showed a familial match to DNA evidence collected from the scene of Vicky Weggers' murder back in '86.
The combination of the digital trail and the DNA match. That was it.
That was it. February 25th, 2005. Nearly 31 years after the Otero murders. Dennis Rader was arrested. The mask was finally definitively gone.
His court appearances must have been surreal, this ordinary-looking guy.
Extremely surreal. Initially, he seems detached, almost bored. But then during his sentencing hearing, he gave this monologue, just cold, detailed descriptions of each murder. No emotion, no remorse. It was horrifying.
Chilling. And the sentence.
10 consecutive life sentences.
Yeah.
One for each victim he confessed to murdering. He's incarcerated at El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas.
The impact on his family must have been unimaginable.
Absolutely devastating. His wife, his children. Discovering that the person they loved and lived with was capable of such things. His daughter, Carrie Rawson, has actually written and spoken about her experience processing that trauma.
And for Wichita, the community.
A massive shock and a long process of grappling with how this evil could exist undetected in their midst for so long. Someone they knew, someone who seemed normal.
So trying to understand the why, psychologically, what are we looking at? Keeping in mind we're analyzing after the fact.
Well, the patterns strongly suggest, as we touched on, extreme narcissism. That need for attention, the feeling of superiority, the manipulation, the total lack of empathy. It's all there in his letters, his actions, his courtroom behavior.
And the sexual element, the sadistic fantasies.
Clearly central. The BTK bind, torture, kill wasn't just a name. It was the core of his compulsion, his paraphilia.
Yeah.
The control, the domination, the infliction of pain were integral to his urges.
And that ability to compartmentalize, to be dad and church president one minute and BTK the next.
It's one of the most disturbing aspects. That capacity to wall off different parts of his life, to function in his normal role without apparently being constantly overwhelmed by the darkness, it's a profound disconnect.
And Factor X was his way of explaining it, or excusing it.
It seems like a mechanism for denial, for avoiding responsibility. By framing it as an external force, he didn't have to fully own that the source of these horrific desires and actions was him. Dennis Rader, hidden behind that carefully constructed mask.
It's just a terrifying story, isn't it? A real-life demonstration of how deep human deception can run, how evil can wear such an ordinary face.
For 3 decades, he lived that lie while terrorizing a city, all driven by those internal compulsions and ultimately his own ego.
And in the end, it was that ego, that slip-up with the floppy disk combined with technology he didn't understand that brought him down.
A stark reminder that even the most meticulous mask can eventually crack. But the scars he left on the victims' families, on the community, those are permanent.
We absolutely must remember the victims. Joseph, Julie, Josephine, and Joseph Otero Jr., Catherine Bright, Shirley Valian, Nancy Fox, Maureen Hedge, Vicki Wegerle, and Dolores Davis.
Their names, their lives, should never be overshadowed by his notoriety.
So, as you think back on this deep dive, what really stands out for you? Is it the sheer length of time he got away with it, the utter normality of his public persona, or maybe the cold, calculated nature of his Factor X? It's a case that definitely leaves you thinking about the hidden depths people can have.